Hello. I'd like to call to order the City of Littleton's City Council virtual regular meeting for June 16, 2020. The time is 6:30. City Clerk, if we could have the roll call, please.
Mayor Valdez.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Malin.
Here.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Present.
Councilmember Elrod. Councilmember Fay. Councilmember Grove.
Here.
Councilmember Milliman.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right. Thank you, Colleen. All right, Sama, if you could please let us know how this meeting will proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of council, staff, citizens, and guests. I'm Sama Fox, Assistant to the City Manager, and I'll be serving as the moderator for this evening's virtual council meeting. We are streaming this meeting on Cable Channel 8, Facebook, and on our website, littletongov.org. The agenda will be handled by Mayor Valdez in the same way it would be handled for a regular in-person meeting. As always, citizen participation is encouraged during public comment and public hearings. To participate via phone, please call 669-900-6833. And when prompted, enter the webinar ID 928-8254-3046. There will be two opportunities for citizen participation this evening, once during public comment and again during ordinances on second reading and public hearings. If you wish to speak during either of these opportunities, please call in early and stay on the line. Again, the number to call is 669-900-6833. And when prompted, enter the webinar ID 982-8254-3046. When public comment or public hearing is announced, press *9 to raise your hand and be recognized as a speaker. Microphones will be muted for all citizens calling in. Citizens can press *9 to raise their hand and be recognized. Speakers will have 30 seconds to address council. The city clerk will announce when you have, speakers will have 3 minutes to address council. The city clerk will announce when you have 30 seconds remaining, and again when your time is up. We expect comments to be civil. Disrespectful or disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. For agenda items, Mayor Valdez will ask for a motion and a second, followed by discussion and a vote. Council will vote on agenda items using a thumbs up for a yes vote and a thumbs down for a no vote. The clerk will call each vote with all ayes and nays. Again, if you plan on participating during public comment or public hearing, please call 669-900-6833. And when prompted, enter the webinar ID 928-8254-3046. Please stay on the line and press *9 to raise your hand to speak. Mayor?
All right, thank you very much, Sam Fox. All right, Council, we have the agenda, or do we have any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. We'll move on down to our third item. It is comments and reports. We'll start with the City Manager.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I've got a couple of things I just would like to touch on. We had our first weekend of the weekends on Main Street, and I just got a couple of things to share there, and I think I'm gonna defer, quite honestly, to many of the council members because I've heard directly from you. In fact, we had a RISE meeting here. This is our business recovery group, and I believe there was a lot of great comments there. But generally, I think staff's pretty pleased with it. We learned a few things. Facebook, that's an indication. We had over 380 likes on Facebook with 80 comments for our first weekend, and I would say it was really positive. We are looking at a couple of issues there in order to approve this. I think probably the most notable was Sunday looked a little light, and so I think we'll enter into some discussion here with the restaurants and merchants here about Sunday in particular. And certainly, as promised to council, after this weekend, we're going to go ahead and do another survey here of all of the businesses and merchants and kind of get some input on that and see what adjustments that might tell us. So again, I'm going to defer maybe some of the updates to council on that first weekend on Main Street. The other piece I just want to comment on is the continuing discussion that I have as a city manager with other city managers in Arapahoe County with county staff about the CARES Act. And of course, tonight we have the first reading of the supplemental appropriation here for the CARES funding of about $4.4 million. And Tiffany Hooten, our finance director, has a presentation. We'll certainly touch on the purpose of that. Part of the conversations the city manager have, and also the economic development directors of the various cities, is trying to make sure that we optimize the opportunity here through the CARES Act funding. And a couple of conclusions I just wanted to share with you. And the next time we come before council, we'll have more detail on this. But one of the applications that we did make here and gained approval in the county was for the second round of our business grants. And I had shared with council before that we were going to take the prior list, use our existing criteria, and we had roughly 51 businesses that would qualify for the $2,500. So we're in process actually now of since we have approval, of cutting those checks to the businesses. I'll provide council with a list. I think you'll be very pleased to see who's on that list. And we'll also share with you those who are not approved. I think perhaps the biggest news out of this is really what I would call the opportunity for a third round of business grants. There is a lot of conversation that's going on here to making sure that the cities kind of focus on what we believe are our needs. And the county also has an opportunity to look at business grants that'll perhaps on a little larger scale for the larger businesses. In fact, we have a briefing here for the mayors of all the cities in the county here this Friday with the county commissioners on that topic. I think one of the other conclusions is that early on, all the cities were looking at the opportunity for perhaps for rental assistance. I think it's now our conclusion here that we're looking to the county to utilize their funding and their advantage, quite honestly, on that front. They have all the resources in place. They have the staffing. This is part of the county services. And so they have agreed that this is perhaps one of the issues they need to kind of lead on. There may be a couple of cities taking exception or looking at an exception to that, may add to that. I think the city of Aurora is perhaps one of those exceptions. They have a kind of a deeper need here than certainly us. But those conversations do continue on the CARES Act, and I'm pretty pleased with our progress from my perspective. And we'll again share that with the council here in the very near term. The other thing I would share is that we've had another discussion about variances through the county process. We did share this at the RISE meeting as well. And if you remember, the county is the one who can go to the state and ask for a variance. And I shared with council in the RISE group that gyms, churches, and restaurants were looking for obtaining 50% capacity based on the fire code and not have a maximum number. I think as we've shared with you, and certainly Reed could add to this, our city attorney, there's a lot of action going on at the state level. And I believe that here in the next week or two that we're likely to see more state orders here relaxing some of these standards. And so I think the variance the county's asked, we may see at the same time acting on maybe even some more relaxation on that issue. We also this week received more state order where it looks like we have an opening here on libraries and museums. I'm going to let Reed talk about that under the city attorney comments, but I think we're starting to see some real possibilities here. So with that, Mr. Mayor and Council, that's the end of my report.
Great, thank you very much. City Attorney. It's the best T sound, isn't it?
Thank you. Sorry about that. Yesterday, Governor Polis announced some new guidelines that they are accepting comment on, and some of those guidelines are expected to go into effect on Thursday. And so what Governor Polis had issued, which the state has not necessarily set forth, but what's been promised by the state is that we may be able to see bars open starting on Thursday. I know there were a couple of places downtown, at least, that could not partake in the events on Weekend on Main just because they didn't meet the food requirements. But at least it's a 25% kind of reopen on bars, which is supposed to go into effect, as I said, on Thursday. Additionally, they set forth kind of guidelines for reopening some of the indoor spaces. So as Mr. Ralph alluded to, museums, I won't go so far as library, but they're kind of tiering the capacity of those venues to how large the rooms are. And so they have at least released proposed guidelines that could allow for the interior of the museum to reopen. I know that Mark, as well as Randy and Tim Nims over at the Library and Museum, have been preparing kind of contingency plans for how that reopen would work and how it would look, how you would go about maintaining kind of capacity and not overseating capacity. So those are some of the things that we expect to have more guidance on coming on Thursday. One other thing I would expect from the governor's orders are they're going to start deferring back to the counties a bit more. So as this variance process that Mark had alluded to going to the county, then that going to the state, I'm expecting to see the state just put it in the hands of the public health authorities in each county to start managing those variance processes. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to get any variances that we need on a quicker basis than having to wait for the state, for 7 or 10 days. So that is my report.
Great. Well, thank you very much. All right, we'll start with Council Member Driscoll, then Elrod, Fay, Grove, Milliman, and then Millen. So Council Member Driscoll.
Thank you, Mayor. As Mark mentioned, Jerry and myself attended the RISE meeting today, and I thought the feedback was very, very positive. I do want to recognize Kelly and Elizabeth and the entire staff, city staff that helped put this together. I thought it was, I was down there Friday night. I felt it was very well done, and I'm hoping people come down and enjoy downtown Littleton this weekend. So that's my report.
Great, thank you very much. Council Member Elrod.
We had our, first, again, Littleton Arts and Culture Commission meeting last Thursday. And a couple of updates from that, 2 action items that we are taking. We did an inventory of all the various art organizations, both for-profit, nonprofit, etc., and includes the city of Littleton. So we have a working inventory list to really begin to highlight the depth and breadth of the creative industries in the city of Littleton. So we have that in progress, hope to finish that up by the next meeting. And then we also have a survey that we are putting out to the various organizations, not too dissimilar of what we've done with citizens and businesses to really understand their needs, and as well as how they have shifted during this time and the impacts of COVID, so that we have a little bit of a better grasp of kind of the state of the creative industries in the city of Littleton. And heard from Aspen Grove, from Town Hall Arts Center, from Arapahoe Philharmonic of all of the great things that they're already doing. Aspen Grove has art murals on the parking lots, and they have flag banisters, and they're doing the Littleton Car Jam with the city of Littleton. Town Hall Arts Center is opening up their summer classes and programming, which is huge for the families here in Littleton. So a lot of they're doing really great work and have showed initiative for sure. And then what else do I have? Fine Arts Board meeting is coming up this Thursday, and I did attend Weekends on Main this weekend. I was there during the day on Saturday doing some shopping, and in the evening for dinner, all of the restaurants were packed. There was, a wait list. I had dinner at 9 o'clock at night, but that was fine. Yeah, it seemed like people were really enjoying it. Saw some friends and acquaintances, and everyone had a lot of positive things to say. Talked to LPD downtown, no issues. I didn't witness anything of any concern. I did see some businesses open even into the evening. I didn't see too much traffic into those merchants, but we'll see how it goes over time. But I think overall people were just happy to be out, and I think that was one of the key things we wanted to do is, help our community feel safe, that they can engage again with our downtown.
Great, thank you very much. All right, Councilmember Fay.
I would like to talk about the height of buildings taking up from where we were on the June 2nd study session. That was after the regular meeting. So we were asked to consider 4- and 5-story buildings in downtown Littleton because of a precedent that there already are buildings that high. And then that turned out to be, well, what we're talking about is buildings over 60 feet. So I asked Jennifer Henninger, the Community Development Director, for a list of buildings that are that tall. It turns out there really aren't any in downtown Littleton. Parts of Arapahoe Community College are over 60 feet. Myself, I don't consider ACC as part of historic downtown Littleton, but we have it. There are several cell tower structures on the roof of the county building, and they go up to 61 feet. The towers do. The roof itself goes up to only 51 feet, so quite a bit less. And then parts of the mill, which isn't really a building, it's an iconic historic feature, go up to 75 feet. And that's all there are. Also, there has been approved, there's an approved PDO for the property just north of Church Street on the east side of Rapp Street that's approved for a 65-foot building, but that hasn't been constructed yet. And that's all.
Great, thank you very much. Councilmember Grove.
Well, hello. I went down to Weekends on Main on Sunday afternoon, and the restaurants were quite busy. And outside at the tables, there were some people in the shade. It was warm that day, so people tended towards the shade. But there seemed to be a lot of activity in a good way. It wasn't overwhelming so that you didn't feel safe. So that's kind of a perspective from an afternoon. I also wanted to talk about Historical Preservation Board. As I mentioned before, members of Historical Preservation Board and the Planning Commission are getting together in small groups to walk around downtown Littleton. And they are doing this because they want to work on a project to create some statements to help define the character of downtown in anticipation of our phase 2 of our code update. So they're going to be meeting on January 22nd, pool their findings, and then send something to staff and council. So we should look for that here at the end of the month. Second thing I wanted to talk about was the Next Gen Advisory Committee, and that met last Thursday. And they assigned themselves the task of reading the Envision plan to get an overview of the vision of the city, and then discuss their impressions of it. They thought it was very strategic, very high level, and a good anchor for their future discussions, because they really want to make sure that they align what they discuss with the Envision plan, so their opinions will be valued by City Council. They've decided to focus on 3 strategic things over the next couple of months, and they thought the most effective way to do that would be divided into subcommittees, and then do any data collection, any discussion, and then bring a discussion back to the larger group on their monthly meetings in order to talk about it in a very prepared format. So the 3 areas they want to work on is the zoning and code updates. Second thing is environment and sustainability. And the last thing is something that they've called diversity, inclusion, equality, and belonging. So those are the 3 things they're going to work on over the next few months. In addition, staff had requested that they respond to some questions about events in Littleton in light of the pandemic. And so they discussed their perspective on Weekends on Main, and they want to gather some more in-depth opinions from everybody on the committee, and then put them all together, respond to the questions that staff gave them, and then provide a written report. So we should see that in the next couple weeks. We did have one member that resigned, and he was from a student at ACC. And I don't know if you remember, but we intended to publicize this committee and applications for membership to ACC in the high schools, and COVID hit. So it would be especially nice if we could replace this individual. It would be great if it was a student, but not necessarily. So if anybody listening tonight is interested or knows anybody between 16 and 36 that might be interested in this committee, we meet once a week on the first Thursday of the month, and then there's additional meetings and commitments. So just contact myself or Ryan Thompson as part of staff, and we will go through the process. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Councilmember Millen.
Hi, good evening. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate Kelly Nardi and her staff for really, in a very short period of time, pulling together a fantastic weekend. Weekends on Main. I had friends that went this weekend and they had nothing but glowing praise about it. And we're so excited to be able to get back into downtown Littleton and enjoy an adult beverage and a nice meal. So kudos to Kelly and also to all the merchants in downtown Littleton that participated and made this happen. So let's keep it going. And just another reminder, another plug for folks out there to please complete the census if you have not already done so. Hopefully also vote, because I know ballots are due here at the end of the month. I did miss the South Metro Housing Options board meeting on Thursday. My husband and I were in California helping our son celebrate his fake graduation from Cal Poly. So unfortunately I missed it, but I talked to Corey today and he said they did get to officially meet the new executive director for Libby Boards. Her name is Emma Mallory, and they love her and she's going to do a fantastic job there. All is well and good and stable at Libby Boards. Just another reminder that the Housing Task Force is up and running. Another little brief history on that group. There was a housing study commissioned by the city back in 2017. There were recommendations that were passed on the city staff that were incorporated into council, that were incorporated into the comp plan. And this includes the formation of this task force. And this task force is going to be very engaged in the ULUC process. Just a reminder too, that predictions as of now, within 20 years, a midpoint average, the city of Littleton is looking to add an additional 15,000 residents, which means that we will have a shortage of 6,550 housing units. Currently, we have about 1,500 housing unit gap right now in the city of Littleton. And I just want to put that out there and put it into all of our collective psyches as we go forward with updating codes and zoning. And that would, Pam, I think that would be a great thing for the next gen group to look at when they've got that subcommittee working on diversity and inclusiveness. Obviously, we want to bring in a diverse housing stock into the city. Also, I want to thank Andrea Mimna. She took myself and Craig from the Planning Commission on a nice evening tour last night of Alamo and Main Street, looking at different historical buildings, commercial buildings, just kind of talking through things out loud, what we like, maybe dislike, what or not dislike, but what were some opportunities that could be presented in downtown Littleton. And interestingly, Carol, Andrea did point out a building on, what was that? Prince and Main Street. It's on the east side. It's right by the Inside Scoop ice cream parlor. That was a 4-story building. Can't really see it because there's a lot of trees in front of it, but that is one in downtown Littleton. So that's all I have for tonight. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll go to Mayor Pro Tem Millen.
Thanks, Jerry. Couple things. I finally got an email today that the Santa Fe Planning and Environmental Linkages project is underway. So stay tuned. I got a schedule spanning the next 8 months. So obviously a big deal. I'm looking forward to what might come out of this. I did the downtown character tour with tour guide Rick Cronenberger from the Historical Preservation Board on Friday. And I'm really looking forward to that group's distilling down of the feedback they got from people who took the tour. That coincided with the first weekends on Main, and it was nice to see the downtown hopefully coming back to life. I was at part of that next gen meeting by video, and certainly applaud that committee's choices of subcommittee all around. I'll look forward to what they discover and bring to council on the ULUC and on sustainability and also on diversity. And I especially applaud them for that diversity subcommittee. This Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Sorry, I got to look at my cell phone to get the right information. At Stern Park by the playground, there's a Black Lives Matter community solidarity walk to the courthouse. It's designed to be a family-friendly event with strollers and wagons and homemade signs encouraged. 1.3 mile walk where we'll practice social distancing and wear masks. I've been invited to speak at that, and it'll be my privilege to do that. I think a couple of my fellow council members will also be attending. And then the last thing is, if Mark, if you wouldn't mind asking someone from community development to share some of the data that Councilmember Fay mentioned. It sounds like that could be useful for all of council to consider. So that's it.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. And I think that the walk is going to go from Stearns. It's going to go a little bit south and over to was it Prince to Powers, and then up Rio Grande to the courthouse. And I presume at the courthouse is where you'll get to do your speech. Yeah. Cool. All right. Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. Yeah.
Oh, and I just want to thank the Littleton Police Department is going to be there, of course, keeping everybody safe. And I just want to really thank them for their participation in the event.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, Karina, thank you for getting the Arts and Culture Committee out to a great start. Getting these things started is always a tough thing for any board or commission. So thank you very much for all the work you're putting into that, because I know you are. I know your heart. I know that's very dear to you. And also, I want to thank Pam, too, for what you're doing with the Next Gen. They've had a rough first year, and it sounds like they've done almost as much in one or two meetings than they did all last year. So really, thank you, both of you, very much, because that's a big deal to get both of those off to a great start. And with the Next Gen, we want them to be productive, because I think they sunset at the end of this year, unless they can show that they're productive, and yeah, we can keep them going. So and that's what the goal is, to keep that one going. But thank you very much to both of you for that. I too attended the weekend on Main on Friday, and I went down there Saturday. I went down there Sunday as well. It was very nice to see all the people out dining. Obviously, everybody's excited about to eat somewhere besides their house or their car. Also, the sidewalks while they had people, they weren't packed, and I thought the social distancing, everybody was very respectful about that, because I think that's key to the whole thing, is the social distancing part. I do have a question for our city attorney as far as meetings go. I've had some people ask me about book clubs and things like that. If they have a meeting at their house in their backyard and to maintain social distancing, but if they have more than 10 people, is that allowable in today's environment right now? Reed?
I think I'm here. Sorry, I'm in the library. I have to be quiet, Mayor. So you're referring to simply private book clubs meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, as long as they can practice social distancing, that's the recommendation. So if you were having persons over at your house, while they're recommending no more than 10 people, that would be fine.
But if they had more than 10 people, then they should not. Is that what the state guideline is right now?
That's the guidance. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And then also, let's see, for those with kids, Bemis Library has an incredible programs going on right now. If you go to YouTube, you can see all kinds of things. And again, I want to give Val and Shannon, they're great little actors and they're reading these stories to little kids, and it's pretty neat. I got to do some with my grandson, and it's amazing the attention that they draw. Today I did attend a homeless meeting with the mayors, Metro mayors, as well as CHAFA. And with CHAFA, they pointed out a few things. And the state legislators, as you know, they finished their session. It's my understanding, and Reed kick in if this is not correct, that the legislators did not have an agreement on a moratorium or continuing a moratorium on evictions. Now, we might have something that the state or the governor has put in place still, but the legislators did not come up with anything on moratoriums on eviction. So they are Reed, do you have any comment that you can make on that for the governor and his directive?
Let me take a look. I was just reading something on this yesterday, so maybe I can chime in at the end of the meeting, provide some guidance on that, Mayor.
Yeah, it's important for people who are struggling to make the rents as well as the landlords too. Another thing that was pointed out is that the deferred rents are just deferred. They're not forgiven for the rents that they don't pay. So that they're accumulating, some folks are accumulating a lot of deferred rent that they're going to have to pay back at some point. Hopefully landlords can work with them and do payment plans, things like that. Another thing that was pointed out, that many people are actually paying rent with their credit cards. So they're going to have a huge debt here that's going to come due at some point. Let's see. And CHAFA, Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, they have will have about $7 million that they'll be able to utilize over a 2-year period in regards to rents and things related to that. Now, how they're going to distribute that, they're not sure yet. They're thinking right now that it'll likely go through housing authorities. And of course, we have one here in Littleton, which is fantastic. And I did talk to the director over there, Corey, today. He's not familiar with it yet, because as Reed has pointed out, there's a directive by the hour almost that come out that folks have to keep up with. So hopefully soon our housing authority will have money that they can help a lot of folks out with their rents and other payments like that. And then it'll help out landlords. That's another thing they're talking about. If it's a property that has maybe say 50 units or something, that I'm just picking a number there, that they may work with the property owners so that they only are dealing with one person, and then the landlord would work with the households that are struggling there. Oh, let's see. And I do believe. Okay, I think that's it. That's all I have for. Oh no, I did want to point out our next meeting is next Tuesday, and that's a study session. But the 5th Tuesday, that's 2 Tuesdays away yet. Normally we don't have a meeting, council, but we do have one on that 5th Tuesday this time, and it will be a joint meeting with the Planning Commission, and that's on June 25th, I do believe. All right, so if we don't have anything else, let's go ahead and, council, do you have any other questions for City Attorney? Okay, Corinne.
And if I may, Mayor, I can provide a little bit more information in regard to what the governor released. His executive order, as it relates to evictions, was usually there's 10 days notice that a landlord would have to deliver to a tenant before initiating what's called an FED, or a forcible entry and detainer action. The governor extended that to 30 days. So that went into effect on Saturday and is in effect right now. It also prohibits landlords and lenders from charging late fees that may have incurred for payments between May 1st and June 13th. So there's a little bit of relief there, but not much if you can't pay the rent. So
yeah, and there's also it's a two-way street. The landlords have to pay their bills as well too. So it's a tough issue. Councilmember Elrod.
So this question is for Mark, I think. Did you get any response back from the county on the variance for the outdoor space at the museum?
Actually, yeah, the county is collecting some examples here from Jefferson County and Larimer County here, specifically for museums. And so I have a meeting here, I believe on Thursday again here to kind of check in, but that would be the next opportunity to submit a variance. However, as Reed Betzing, our city attorney, reported, it looks like we may have already a pathway here, at least for the museum. So we'll talk through those options here and see what's practical.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, cool. All right, we're gonna go ahead and move on, council. And we have no citizens appearance tonight. So let's go ahead, we'll move on to public comments. It is, I'll open it at 7:05. If we could please have the assistant to the city attorney, if you could please inform the audience on how they can participate.
Thank you, Mayor. If you wish to speak during public comment, please call 669-900-6833. And when prompted, enter the webinar ID 928-8254-3046. Please press *9 to be recognized. Citizen microphones will be automatically muted until a citizen is called upon to speak by the last 3 digits of their phone number. Please state your name and district or address clearly for the record. As a reminder, the clerk will notify you when you have 30 seconds remaining, and again when your time is up. Public comment is an opportunity to express opinions or ask questions regarding issues that are not part of public hearings on tonight's agenda. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. The city clerk will notify you when you have 30 seconds remaining, and again when your time is up. The City Council is not authorized by Colorado Open Meetings Law to discuss, comment, or take action at the meeting on any issue raised by public comment that is not part of tonight's agenda. The mayor may refer the matter to the city manager and/or city attorney for immediate comment after public comment, or to staff for additional information and to report back to council as appropriate. We expect comments to be civil. Disrespectful or disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. We currently have 2 participants in the queue for public comment. The caller with the last 3 phone number digits of 819 is first on the line. Caller 493 is on deck. Caller 819, you have been unmuted and may begin speaking.
Hi, City Council. This is, excuse me, Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from the City Center in District 1. First off, I wanted to say I appreciate your explicit reading of how citizens can participate in the virtual meetings. I know it's repetitive, but I really appreciate your insistence in this very obvious way that citizens know how they can participate. Thank you very much. But I do want to point out the video, the online streaming video of the meeting lags the phone audio by about a minute. And so you really need the video to understand who's speaking and get some of the body language and what's going on with people. But the audio is a minute earlier. And so to be engaged, you really have to have the audio from the phone. Maybe there's something that can technically be done with that. I don't know, but I wanted to mention it. The thing I really wanted to talk about is fundamental concerns about the proposed code changes for downtown. And I'm going to say that in the last month, 6 weeks, that's the first time we've seen any definition for what is being proposed. That's about a year too late. The concept of public engagement, I remember the city manager talking about how cool it was that there would be these small groups in trailer parks and people's homes and stuff like that, and people would get to talk about the impacts. You know, the impacts that are being defined now are the ones that people really need to weigh in on. I mean, I'm sorry, I live downtown and it matters a lot whether buildings are 4 or 5 stories, and we should be able to see that. We, the property owners, we, the people who live here, people who rent, we should be invited to charrettes to talk about this. And we're not engaged. So the public engagement on this is deficient and not appropriate. The code changes will result in takings from us. They are givings to developers, and they are takings from us. And you should engage us before you consider making any of these. You shouldn't release a document in a couple of weeks for approval. It's not ready.
30 seconds.
So let me mention a couple of things that have come up. The change from use-based to form-based zoning has been made explicit for the first time in the past month. There hasn't been a single study session talking about pros or cons or consequences of this. Same for the removal of government districts, which right away has the effect of monetizing all the property. It removes the protection of borrowed green space in the form of the neighborhood. Who plans the form of the neighborhoods? That's what use-based zoning does, and that's what you do, council, and it's
That's
missing.
time.
So thanks for listening. I'm gonna try to talk some more about this in another time.
Great, thank you very much. And we have a second caller, Sama?
Yes, just a reminder to all callers on the line, please go ahead and press *9 now if you wish to speak. Our next caller is at 493. Caller 493, you have been unmuted. Please begin speaking.
This is Frank Atwood. I live in South Castilla Street, and back in May, I proposed a bet with city leaders with regards to the character of Littleton Boulevard. And it starts out basically that I feel downtown Littleton's small town character has been lost. But now I'm hoping that the community will not lose the mid-century modern character on Littleton Boulevard that Rick Cronenberger is so proud of. The west end of Littleton Boulevard lost its character in my mind when Vita dwarfed the courthouse. We now take it so for granted that it hosts Littleton's Inc.'s meeting. My bet is that I suspect within 4 years, the Planning Commission, the Historical Preservation Board, the Historical Littleton Inc. will be complicit in another monstrosity destroying Middle or East Littleton Boulevard mid-century modern character. If I can't count on the preservation of Littleton's character, I'll try to make money off my prediction. I challenge anyone to a $50 bet that within 4 years, another unpopular monstrosity will replace a cherished landmark on Littleton Boulevard. Hope that I have takers. Hope that there's Littleton leaders that will just find this bet preposterous and double me on it, rather confident that we will not have a monstrosity. I hope that, but I don't believe it. So thank you, good luck, and having been concerned with downtown Littleton's loss of character, I'm now waiting to see a mid-century modern loss of character on Littleton Boulevard in both the middle and eastern sections of it, closer to Broadway. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Frank. Thank you very much. Sama, do we have another caller?
Mayor, there are no other callers in the queue.
All right, thank you. I will close the public comment section at 7:13. And with that, city manager, city attorney, do you have any comments that you want to make?
Mr. Mayor, Council, just a couple of comments. We have commented before on the lag between the actual video and public comment. And there is a better format to actually watch. I think it's, Sam Fox, you may have to remind me here, but I believe it's our web link is the best one to actually watch in real time as close as possible. Some of the social media accounts do lag, and that's probably not the best. I believe we've actually even updated our webpage to kind of remind people of that. I think just as a reminder, you know, we've obviously been through a pretty extensive process through the comprehensive plan. That is kind of the larger guiding document here for a lot of our code discussion. And so we're now into that next stage. As council knows, since COVID-19 has been with us, we've had to modify our approach. And so we've been going to a series of virtual meetings here, trying to gather that public input. So the conversation that the council has had here the last few weeks, and certainly with the Planning Commission coming up here in the next week or two, the intent is to produce a draft for a broader public display and discussion here, I think sometime towards the end of July. And so we're still on target with that. And so that would be the best opportunity, I think, for our citizens to kind of see the draft of this. And just as a reminder, this is an attempt here to reconcile a different approach with our old code, recognizing that we've had some real challenges with that in the downtown. That's not the only opportunity to address the issue. And so by October of this year, we would put into what we call the phase 2 through the Kendall Keys process. In a year from now, that is also going to be a public process that allows us to still look at the downtown. And I'm sure that through the other building blocks that we've got, say, for neighborhoods, I'm sure we're going to recognize a few things and we're going to come back and actually modify. I'm confident we'll end up modifying some of our earlier actions here in the downtown. And certainly Littleton Boulevard, that is a big focus. I have discussed that corridor with many of you. That is part of one of our next building blocks. And I believe that is for the corridors. And I think I've shared with you, I do believe besides downtown, Littleton Boulevard is probably the next highest risk in our neighborhood. And I think that action is definitely appropriate for the protection of that corridor. I also think it's an amazing asset here. And I think the speaker touched on the mid-century, and it is probably, as the council knows, one of the best examples in the entire Denver metro area. So definitely worth saving. So those would be, council, my general comments on those few topics.
Great,
Mayor,
thank you.
we did have another hand go up right when Mark started his comments.
Another caller?
Correct.
Okay, I'm going to open the public comment. It is 7:16. Go ahead.
Caller at 160, you have been unmuted. Please begin speaking.
Hello, my name is Emily. I live over in District 1 by the Options High School, and I just had a couple of concerns and questions for everybody. I was wondering, first off, if the Littleton City Council has made any statements in response to the protests that have been going on, and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. I'm just wondering if Littleton has made an anti-racism commitment for Littleton, and if Littleton has done that, where I might be able to find that and spread the word. As I mentioned, I live over by the Options High School, and I noticed that there is a police parking spot in front of the high school. And I'm just trying to get a little bit more information on why there is a police presence at that high school. I don't think that children are criminals, and I don't think that they should be policed by our police force. So I'm kind of concerned about that. And I just wanted to voice my concerns. I'm very interested in the movement that has been going around to defund the police. And I am wondering the committee's feelings on that movement, if there is any plans to reduce funding for the police in Littleton and potentially reallocate those funds. I'm really concerned about the police brutality, and I would be interested if the city of Littleton could potentially reallocate funds in a way that could show solidarity to communities in the Denver metro area that are facing police brutality, because I think that's a serious human rights issue. And since we're part of the greater Denver area, I think as a community, we should be in solidarity with victims of police brutality. And on that topic, I'm just wondering if Littleton is planning on making a statement about the death of Elijah McClain, who was killed in Aurora in police custody.
30 seconds.
And the final thing I just wanted to mention was I'm really looking forward to the Black Lives Matter protest, but I just wanted to remind the council that the protests are against police brutality, and perhaps thanking the police officers for participating in that might be a little bit missing the point of some of the recent protests that have been going on.
Time's up.
So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for calling in. Appreciate it. All right, Sama, do we have any other callers?
Mayor, there are no other callers. Thank you.
Okay, I am going to close it, and this is the final time, and it's going to be at closing at 7:19. We're not going to open it up anymore tonight. We got to move on to our meeting. So thank you very much for taking those calls, Sama. All right, so we are going to move on to our consent agenda item. Sama, if you will.
Thank you, Mayor. Consent agenda items may be adopted by a simple motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion. Any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member.
Great. Thank you very much. And we have our first item is 6A, a resolution 52-2020, authorizing a grant application to the Denver Regional Council of Governments for the Broadway Fiber Optics Communications for Regional Traffic Operations Project. Item 6B, ID 20-160, approval of the June 2nd, 2020 virtual regular meeting minutes. Council, do I have a motion?
Chair, I move to approve consent agenda item resolution 52-2020, authorizing a grant application to Dr. Cog for Broadway fiber optic communication, and ID number 20-160, approval of June 2nd, 2020 virtual meeting.
I second that.
All right, we have Mr. Driscoll was the second. Council, any discussion? If not, a yes vote is to approve, and a thumbs up would be to approve, and a thumbs down against. So ready to vote? And vote.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
All right. Thank you very much, Colleen. All right. So let's go ahead and we're going to move on to our general business. We have one item on there, 7A, which is ordinance 25-2020, an ordinance on first reading, amending ordinance number 25, series of 2019, known as the Annual Appropriations Bill. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. We had a study session here a couple of weeks ago talking about kind of the status of the CARES Act and how it might be applicable to the city. We had some direction from that discussion. We're here tonight. Tiffany Hooten, our finance director, is going to present to you a briefing on that. And this is the first reading of an appropriation ordinance. And so this is necessary in order for the city to receive the funds and ultimately spend those. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany Hooten.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to go ahead and share the presentation. Okay. Good evening, Council. Tonight before you, you have ordinance 25-2020. And this ordinance is related to an amendment to the 2020 budget related to the CARES Act funds. The CARES Act funds, just a reminder, CARES Act funds were provided to jurisdictions who had a population of 500,000 or more. Arapahoe County and Jefferson County have both received funds, and they did opt to distribute those funds to municipalities within their jurisdictions. They remitted these funds to the municipalities based on a 55 and 45% split. 55% was remaining with the county and 45% was to go to the cities. So between the two counties, Arapahoe and Jefferson County, the city is going to receive about $4.4 million. If you recall, both IGAs were approved by City Council on May 19th. We did have a study session on May 26th to talk about potential eligible expenditures. Just a reminder that the counties are the actual custodians of the funds, so they have fiduciary and reporting responsibilities, and they have defined some reporting requirements for each municipality, and they've shared those with us. So we do have some forms available that we can remit reimbursement or pre-approval on expenditures that the city anticipates. A couple of other items. There were a few defined uses of the CARES Act through the Treasury. One is they have to be necessary and in response to the health emergency. The other is they were not accounted for in our most recent budget as of March 27th. And then the last one is they do have to be incurred by between the period of March 1st, 2020 and ending on December 30th. A couple of noted expenditures that are eligible is, again, they have to be related to the public health emergency, whether directly or through a second order effect. They cannot be used to offset lost tax revenue, which is certainly one of the things that have been a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And any unspent funds at the end of the year, 2020, do have to be returned to the Treasury. They did list a few ineligible expenditures, such as damages covered by insurance, so we can't recoup any expenditures that an insurance might cover, payroll expenses for anyone not directly related to COVID-19, expenditures that are going to be reimbursed by another federal program. Essentially, if we have the FEMA grant and we can apply for the same expenditure reimbursement from both programs. Workforce bonuses or hazard pay as ineligible, any severance pay, and then any legal settlements that might be a result of COVID-19. So those are truly the only ones that were explicitly ineligible. There's a lot of discussion on what is eligible. They didn't give a lot of guidance. They gave some, so the county has certainly been vetting that and sharing eligible expenditures with the group as they define those. We did have an initial review that we talked with council about in May of some potential expenditures. Some of the things that we talked about were related to facility improvements, some personnel potential costs, and a number of technology advances that we would like to pursue. I think just a reminder too is council did support our first phase of those expenditures in the amount of about $1.18 million. Some of those things include the second phase of the business grants and the potentially a third phase, which we have received approval from the county to move forward with that. And we're waiting for a response on reimbursement of the first phase. Screening and guards for public facing areas in the city center, PPE, so a portion of the weekends on Main Street, disinfecting public facilities, enhancements to our phone system to address the limited number of people in the office and accessing that remotely. And then again, laptops, licenses, and other software related items that we're required to allow our employees to work remotely through all of this. I'm going to go back just a little. The other part is we also do have an internal working group that are meeting to kind of review the list of expenditures and prioritize those expenditures and kind of align them with, you know, council goals, our reopening guidelines, make sure we're not duplicating efforts at the county or even the state level, you know, really wanting to review those and making sure that we're leveraging as much as we can with these CARES Act funds. I mentioned the allocation to Littleton is about $4.4 million. Majority of that's from Arapahoe County. There's not going to be an impact to fund balance related to grants. There's an offsetting revenue. And so this budget amendment is actually amending our grants fund. So it's not amending general fund or capital projects fund. It's strictly amending our grants fund portion of our total appropriation, and there's an offsetting revenue. So if we're not going to receive the reimbursement or the revenue, then we won't be spending the money out of this appropriation. A couple of alternatives, approve the amendment as presented. We did opt to appropriate the entire amount right now. Otherwise, we would be coming back to council probably almost every meeting to appropriate as we go along. So I think appropriating it, all of it up front is the best path for us to take. You could also not approve the amendment, but it would delay the availability of the CARES Act fund for spending and reimbursement. Our recommendation is to move forward with this amendment on first reading and then set a public hearing for July 7th. And with that, I can certainly open it up for questions.
All right, thank you, Tiffany.
Sure.
Wait, all right. As soon as I can see council will start with questions. Who wants to start it out? Mr. Driscoll.
Yes, Tiffany, thank you for that presentation. Just to clarify, are we going to the county before we are writing checks? And if so, how long is it taking the county to approve our request?
Yeah, so there are some things that the city has already spent related to PPE, masks, disinfectant, things like that. So in those areas, we will be asking for reimbursement. Those are clearly related to COVID, so I don't have any concerns with those being approved. Some of the other items we are going to be asking for pre-approval prior to moving forward. It's just going to depend on the type of event or expenditure. Certainly with any building improvements, we want to get pre-approval from the county because those are large dollars. And we want to make sure that we have their support before we move forward with those. Some of the smaller ones definitely will be a reimbursement if we've already spent them. But for the majority, we want to do a pre-approval if we can in any event.
Great. All right. Councilmember Elrod.
A follow-up to that question. So with the pre-approval that's going to the county, to what degree is that coming to council first as we plan on spending or investing these dollars, before we're going to the county? So I know that you had presented some items last time. There has been some changes to that. For example, I think rental assistance is one of them. So how do we engage in that process, or how do you envision our level of engagement in that?
So I think if you recall, when we first started discussing CARES Act, we wanted to kind of address it in a phased approach. And so council did support the 1.1 million originally, and acknowledging that some of that's changed and it's probably going to continue to change. So I envision us having periodic updates with council to get some generalities of what direction council is looking at. The other thing is working with our internal group to make sure that we align it with the priorities, but then presenting those phases to council throughout, probably through the end of at least October would be my guesstimate. And I know Mark probably wants to chime in here too.
He does.
Thanks, Mayor. I think what I would add is that, I envision some of these pieces being pretty significant. And while we may talk about it at a study session and gain direction there, I think we just, if the council feels more comfortable with a formal motion on some of it, that certainly would be appropriate. I think the third round of a potential grant is probably one of those. Certainly building improvements. We have some complexities with already scheduled remodel, and how the CARES funding interacts with that, I think, is a pretty detailed conversation. Clearly, we need to get review and approval of that by council.
Mark, is this something you wanted to add to a study session maybe for next week?
Well, I'd have to confer with, Keith Reister, Public Works Director, Tiffany, and others here. Like she said, there's an internal team here. I think the third round of the grant is probably one that I would like to see scheduled sooner rather than later. Building improvements may be a little bit later, simply because we're still working through some cost estimate issues. But yeah, I think I do have some interest on the third round of grant potential, getting that soon. I can't pick a date yet because I haven't been briefed in total here.
Okay, because right now we're scheduled for a second reading on this for July 7. So did you want to get a study session in before that?
No, not really, because this is just simply the appropriation. It's the, the formal authority in the end for the council really to spend all of this money. The individual decisions can certainly happen later. We have no intent as staff to spend money beyond that first phase without council review and approval.
Gotcha. Karina, you have another question?
I have a follow-up to Mark's comments. So what I would also ask then is, because this is a finite amount of money, it is important for us to understand what are all of those other things that are coming, because to make decision today for just $1 million maybe doesn't give us the perspective of understanding. If we spend $1 million on this, we're not going to have $1 million later for something else that might come. So it would be very important and valuable for us to really understand the full potential strategy on these investments as opposed to doing a piece at a time, because then what may happen is at the end of the day, we might have a really great idea, but now we've run out of funds. So that would be.
And at the same time, we have to spend it by the end of the year.
Absolutely.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I think that clearly is our intent here, is to share with council kind of the broader thinking on the part of the staff as part of priorities, recommendations. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting kind of complexities with this. The fact that we have to have it spent, by the way, at the end of the year, specifically around building improvements, is certainly going to be a challenge. So we need to be prompt about it. So we'll do our best here to try to get that information to council and make sure they are as comfortable as possible with this process.
Mayor, I have one more comment or question,
Sure,
but I
go
can
ahead.
wait on a second turn. But I can wait on a second turn if that.
Council, anybody else have a question at this time? Karina, why don't you go ahead and go?
Thank you, Council. This is, I think, more of a comment. I really would like us to approach this as an investment into a longer term strategy. So thinking about this of how does this become, I'll call it seed money or starter funds or a partnership that we can build upon as a result of what's happened with COVID, that other things like this can happen in the future, call it resiliency planning. So I really want us to take this is honestly a gift that we have from the American people, to have $4 million to help us restart our economy locally. And I really want to honor the intent of that. I'll talk about Weekends on Main as a really great example of that. Like we stepped in to provide that opportunity for our businesses downtown, but we know it's not going to be sustainable. But I think it did show both our community, our business community, and our citizens what is possible. And I think there's a lot of silver linings that are coming out of COVID. Council, we've talked about this, Mark, we've talked about a bid, a DBA. These are the types of structures that we really need to think about and talk about as a community. I actually just read an article that what we're doing in the city, these types of things are being done across the country through bids and DBAs. So we've stepped in ways others have not, but I really would love for our business community to maintain that momentum. And I think that would be, and this is an opportunity for kind of that baton to the business community while us still being a support to them. So I would like us to talk about not only what we're doing now, but how what we're doing now is going to enable what can be done in the future.
Great. All right. Thank you, Corinne. Council, Mark, did you want to respond to anything? If not, Council, are there any other questions? I don't see any other questions. Now, we do not have a public hearing on this item under general business, but we do have to go into a motion. So Council, if we could have a motion. Councilmember Elrod.
Mayor, I move to, not prepared to.
But are you
I move to approve the ordinance on first reading amended the 2020 annual appropriation bill and to set the second reading and public hearing for July 7th, 2020.
And Councilmember Milliman is the second. All right, Council, if there's no more discussion, let's go ahead. We'll go into our vote. The thumbs up will be in favor and moving it to July 7th. Thumb down would be against. So ready to vote? Let's vote.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Great. Thank you, Council. All right, so we're going to move on to our last item of the evening, which is 8A. It's an ordinance 23-2020.
Mark's got his hand up before we move on. Sorry. Mark's got it.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yes, Mark.
Sorry, Mayor. I think I do want to follow up with council. There was one suggestion on the part of Councilmember Elrod to have maybe a little bit more discussion around bids and DDAs. I'd be more than happy to schedule a study session, say in August, if there's more support for that. So Mayor, do you mind if we just check in here, see if there's willingness to have that discussion?
Absolutely. And by the way, if you're supposed to be at home and alone, you're not. Just want to point that out. I've seen it in the movies, man. Council, are you interested in, would it be in a study session for coming up? What date?
Probably August 11th, I think would be one of the first opportunities.
Okay, Council, I'll just go for a thumbs up on this. If everybody wants it, I'm a thumbs up for sure. Looks like everybody's a thumb up. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get that scheduled as soon as you can. Mr. Driscoll, do you have something there?
Yeah, I was going to just reiterate what you just said there, Jerry. I think it's imperative that we're all on the same page on this. Again, this is not will be a city directive to the business community down in downtown, but I have been in conversation with business leaders downtown, imploring them to start discussions on this, especially knowing that Denver Water will be coming through our town to put a new main pipe in on Main Street. I believe it's still scheduled for next summer. And this is the time for our business community to step up and take over their downtown. So I agree. I'm looking forward to that presentation, Mark.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, Mark, I don't have any agenda here, just out of sheer curiosity. I know we've talked about as a council possible incentives to the downtown merchants to move in these directions of a DDA or bid. To what extent could the CARES Act money be used to seed something like that, or fund an executive director or the like?
Well, with the CARES Act, it'd have to have a direct connection to COVID-19. So my hunch is that there's probably not much of a connection, but I think that's something that we'd have to look at here pretty carefully. And, there's a lot of interesting policy questions kind of surrounding this topic here. And it is certainly, in my opinion, worthy of a conversation here, but the CARES Act connection's probably pretty thin.
Yeah, but nice try though, Scott. You are an attorney after all.
Well, I mean, look, for now, I'll take Mark's word for it, but I think it's worth investigating further whether the connection is thin. I mean, obviously, weekends on Main is a direct result of COVID and so on. So I don't know, just for a later discussion.
Good point.
I agree.
All right. Spoken like a good attorney. What do you want the answer to be? Thank you. All right. We are going to move on to ordinance number 8, or it's 8A is the agenda item, and it's ordinance number 23-2020, an ordinance on second reading approving the designation of the Littleton Post Office located at 5753 South Prince Street as historic landmark. City Manager.
Well, good evening, Council. I'm Andrea Mimnall, and I'm a planner in the Department of Community Development.
Andrea, pardon me if I could just announce the call-in number again real quick before we get started.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sam.
Just a reminder to any citizens wishing to speak for public hearings tonight, please call 669-900-6833. When prompted, enter the webinar ID 928-8254-3046. Please go ahead and press *9 now to raise your hand to be recognized. After the staff presentation, you will be recognized by the last 3 digits of your phone number. Speakers will have 3 minutes to address the council on public hearing topics. Thank you, Mayor and presenter.
Great. Thank you for making sure we got that in there. That's very important, as one of our callers said earlier. So if we can turn it over to Andrea.
Sure. Well, that gave me time to get my presentation up. So tonight's presentation on the landmark designation of the post office is going to include an overview of the application and the process. I'll talk a little bit about the criteria that's required for landmark designation, public notice, and then the recommendations, both from the HPD and staff. So the city received an application to designate the post office as a local historic landmark, and it was signed by the Littleton postmaster. This application follows the successful application for listing on the National Register of Historic Places, which occurred in April of 2019. So a little bit of background. Littleton didn't always have a dedicated building for a post office. Littleton, of course, was a small town, and so big operation wasn't needed at first. And so the first location for the post office was actually at an inn located at the corner of Alamo and Rapp Street. It was called the Harwood Inn. And for many years, people went to the lobby of that inn to take care of their postal needs. But from there, it started to move around to the J.D. Hill General Store across the street, and then it occupied up to 5 or even more locations on Main Street before the post office said, all right, Littleton, you've grown up and you really need your own dedicated building. And so in 1939, the building was completed. And of course, that is the picture of it right there that you see on your screen. The architectural style is considered colonial revival. The location of the post office, of course, is downtown. It's on Prince Street and on the corner of Alamo. So it's right in between West Main and Alamo, very prominent location. I brought some historical photographs with me. They are a little bit fuzzy, but hopefully you can see them. The one on the left is the original building, built in 1939. And then in 1961, post-war, Littleton grew quite a bit, and there was a need for an addition. And you can see from this angle that that rear portion is what was built then to serve the needs of what the city needed at that time. So in terms of the criteria, in order to be a City of Littleton local landmark, there are specific criteria, but there's also a need to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. And I think all of you know that historic preservation is mentioned quite a bit in the comprehensive plan. And first of all, it's mentioned in Littleton's core values in that the city has a passion and commitment to architectural heritage and landmarks. It's also noted in the section on a unified vision for Littleton, Littleton's future, and our guiding principles. In terms of the criteria for landmark preservation, more specific criteria, it enhances a sense of identity in the community in that the post office is located on a prominent corner in downtown and is a major historical building that everybody knows. It's also a good example of an architectural style, the colonial revival style. The remodel also, what I'm referring to as the addition, is also historic in and of itself. And it also exemplifies the social heritage of the community in that it was a very common thing for people to go to the post office on a regular basis. Public notice is required for designation, and the city followed what was required in the code. That includes written notice, notice posted at the city, and a sign to be posted at the property. All of that was followed. And then I'd like to bring up that the Historical Preservation Board held a public hearing on the landmark designation, and the board voted unanimously to recommend approval to the City Council. And the board's resolution is included in your packet. Staff is also recommending approval, and the staff has prepared an ordinance that would approve the ordinance designating the landmark, designating it as a local landmark. And so that is it for my presentation, and I'll be available for questions.
Great, thank you very much. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and we'll open up the public hearing. It is, unless council has any immediate questions, I don't see any, so I'm gonna go right to the public hearing. It is 7:49, And if we could have Sam Fox, if you could let the people remind them one more time on how they can participate.
Thank you, Mayor. A reminder to citizens wishing to speak during public hearing tonight. If you are not already in the queue, please call 669-900-6833. And when prompted, enter the webinar ID 928-8254-3046. Please stay on the line and press star 9 to be raised, for your hand to be raised to be recognized for public comment. Mayor, we currently have 2 callers in the queue. The caller with the last 3 digits of 493 is up first. The caller with the last 3 digits of 819 is on deck. Caller 493, you have been unmuted. Please begin speaking.
Good evening, City Council. This is Frank Atwood in District 4, and I do approve of the post office becoming a local historic landmark. My reminder to City Council is when you walk into the post office and up the steps, it feels that small town character of Littleton. When you come out of the post office and look across Prince Street, the railroad tracks, and at Vita, you're once again reminded of a large building dwarfing the small town character of Littleton. I wish that had not, that character had been preserved better. I'm grateful that city is concerned about the 4 and 5 story buildings. I feel that people have been given a binary choice and wish that they could have been had more options to vote for and to use some sort of approval voting that might be more applicable. Thank you very much. And I wish Littleton's small town character had been better preserved as dwarfed at the post office. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for calling in. Our second caller, please.
Caller 819, you have been unmuted. Please begin speaking.
This is Pam Chadbourne again, and I'm still admiring Frank's slick inclusion of approval voting in that comment. So, but I actually appreciate his comments. Didn't know he was going to make those, but I totally agree with the comments about the Grove building. But first, I do want to say I'm so grateful that this proposal was acted on at every level by staff, by Historic Preservation Board, by this had to go by the local postmaster, HLI, and it had to go to the feds, I think, too. And the merit of this building, I think, should be unquestioned, and its value to Littleton in terms of historic preservation, I think, should also be unquestioned. I hope that you approve this, and thank you for getting it this far. But I do want to kind of follow along what Frank brought up. The scale and mass of the Grove building is inappropriate. It's inappropriate even where it is for mid-century modern or the 1890s character of downtown. And the presentations in the last months about the changes to downtown, I think the mayor asked, why are we being asked about 4 or 5 stories? And the answer was just, well, we wanted to know what you thought. Why are these questions being asked? These shouldn't be asked because this scale and mass, 4 or 5 stories, a half of a block structure, combining lots to make a half a block long structure, those do not go along with historic preservation downtown. They will destroy downtown if enacted. So council, I urge you to preserve this and follow through when these code amendments and proposals come through. Put the kibosh on these massive scale changes, the small sizes of parcels, the building scale and mass. is essential to preserving the 1890s character and the mid-century modern character. You can't preserve them if you add these other components. Littleton is much bigger than downtown and Littleton Boulevard.
30 seconds.
Preserve Main Street and Littleton Boulevard, and let this growth go elsewhere. Don't let it happen in downtown. I just want to also say,
we're getting a little off topic, so if we can stay on topic as it relates to this particular ordinance.
Understood.
Her time's almost
but
up. Let's let her talk.
Yeah. I'm sorry that I'm the only person speaking, but I feel it's important that somebody from the downtown area speak about these things.
Time's up.
We need representation. So I'm
Okay.
sorry it's always me.
Thank you, Pam. We appreciate your calling in. Sama, do we have any other callers?
Mayor, there are no other callers in the queue.
Okay, well, if no other callers, then we will close the public comment at 7:55. And council, we'll start with Council Member Grove and then Milliman.
I was just going to make a motion, but if we had discussion.
Oh, no, go ahead and make a motion. That's fine.
I move to approve ordinance number 23, 2020 on second reading, designating the Littleton Post Office as an historic landmark under section 4-6-8 of the city code.
Second.
Great. Was that Councilmember Milliman? Is that who that was?
Second.
Oh, was that Karina? I'm sorry. Councilmember Elrod was the second. All right, council, do we have discussion? We'll start with Councilmember Milliman, then we'll go to Elrod.
Thank you so much for that presentation tonight. That was awesome. And again, I appreciate you taking me.
So it's difficult to hear you. If you could speak up just a hair.
So, question for Andrea regarding post office. I know last night when we were looking at it, the front part of the post office is, the original building. There was another piece added on to the back side of that building. Is that piece, would that piece be lumped into the historic preservation designation, or is it separate because it was added on?
Yes, thanks for the question. The entire building would be designated as a historic landmark. And in our review of the criteria, we found that it was not only the original structure that was significant, but the addition as well, because of the quality of the architecture and because of how the building was used. It too is part of the social history of the city of Littleton.
Great, thank you. All right, Councilmember Elrod.
Thank you. I also have a question on process, Andrea. So one, thank you for the tour on Saturday. We actually stood right in front of the post office or kitty corner from it. And I think it really brought into light the context around the post office. So not just, I think it is absolutely an asset that we are designating the post office tonight, but can you talk a little bit about the overall process? Alamo in particular, there are numerous other buildings there or groupings of building that add to the context of that area, being residential, walk into the post office. So can you share a little bit about the overall process and how we need to approach this in order to ensure we experience what historic preservation, what historic really means in form of character.
Yeah, and if you can kind of make it, it's a little bit off track for this particular motion, but if you could just give us a brief.
Thank you.
Sure. When the city was originally platted, Main Street was intended as the commercial street and Alamo was the residential street. And Alamo was where people with a little bit of money were able to build their homes. But very quickly after all of the lots filled up on Alamo Street, it began to change. And both in industry came in. We had the Heckendorn manufacturing building. We had commercial buildings come in, and Alamo's changed quite a bit. And so it doesn't have that kind of contextual contiguity that Main Street has. But I think when you look very closely at it, It's a very interesting street, and the post office really plays into that in terms of the variety of buildings and the different eras in which the buildings were built. And so, of course, I'm the historic preservation planner, so I'm for preserving it. But I think that it'll be interesting to see as we go through the ULC process and as we put together the character statements that Pam Grove had mentioned earlier for downtown, and work through all of this, what the council would like to do in terms of preserving it. It could potentially, we haven't done the analysis recently, but it could potentially be eligible as a historic landmark, all of Alamo. Or another approach could be to identify those buildings that are most significant to Littleton's history along Alamo and work to get individual designations on them.
All right, thank you. Yeah, let's try to keep to our motion here. I think that's a worthy topic, though, that I think everybody's doing a tour, and we'll probably should have a study session, I think, for everybody so they can really talk this out. So Mark, maybe at some point we could add that to a study session where we could hear it in depth. I know Karina would like to hear it now. But, Councilmember Grove.
Well, next week, HPB and the Planning Commission are talking about this, and then we, after that, have a joint session with them. So that probably would come out as part of this, wouldn't it, Andrea?
Sure.
Great. Council, are there any other questions? Seeing none, we do have a motion and a second to approve the historic designation. Now, it's already a national designation. Is that correct, Andrea?
Yes, it's listed on the National Register of Historic Places by the National Parks.
All right, so this is a motion to approve the designation for the Littleton Post Office for historic landmark under our ordinance. Thumbs up would be approval, and thumbs down would be opposed. Council, let's vote.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Great, thank you, Council. That is the last item on our agenda. Just a reminder, again, we do have a meeting next Tuesday. It's a study session, and then the 5th Tuesday, we have a meeting that night too with the Planning Commission study session. So if there is nothing else, it is 8:02 and we are adjourned. Thank you.